Hi everyone, Dr. Nicole LePera, the Holistic Psychologist here. Today's video is probably one of the most asked about, and in my opinion, one of the most important, impactful tools of healing, which is shifting what for many of us is a lifetime history of reactivity to a responsiveness. So the video is, how do I respond and not react? So first, let's talk about the difference between reactions and responding. So a reaction is immediate, it's knee-jerk, and it is a habitual way of interacting. It is unconscious, which is why it's very patterned, right? So thing happens in the world, I feel some kind of way, and I do some kind of thing. The more you observe yourself in those moments, the more you see how rote, how autopilot this is, meaning how much this all happens outside of our awareness. It's kind of like being done for us, like it's programmed into us. So that comparing with respond. What does respond mean? Respond is something that is objective, and it is a conscious way of interacting with the present moment. So whereas reacting is unconscious, right, done for us, responding is where we get choice in particular. The reason why I differentiate these two is because so many of us are so used to living in that autopilot, in that reactive state, and we feel so shameful about our reactions at times. I know I do. So say an example comes, right? I get a text and whatever it says on the text makes me feel angry, right? So what do I do when I'm angry? Typically, I do one of two things. I either lash out at the person that upset me, or I dissociate and I withdraw. So say, for instance, here I come and I lash out, right? And then this escalates because the person I've lashed out to, well, chances are they're going to have something to say, right? So now I'm finding myself in a conflict. And I know me, I'm not always the most savory character when I'm in a conflict. I say and do things that I don't mean from that emotional place. What happens after the fact, for me at least, as I'm sure it does for a lot of you, I feel really shameful because I feel like I've experienced myself in this out of control way. Sometimes I don't really even agree with, most of the time, let's be honest, I don't agree with what I said and done. So now I carry shame with me. It's really difficult because that reaction in that moment was real for me, right? It was in that unconscious pathway that was running my show, or that was deciding for me. So cultivating a responsiveness, cultivating a space between the thing that happened, so the same text, and a space for me to show up responsively, to choose a new action is what is incredibly important. So I want to acknowledge this is a process, right? Meaning this doesn't happen overnight, but here are some steps to get us started in the process. The first step, really simple, much easier said than done, is pausing. Even in this society, right, where everything is a mile a minute and I can immediately beam a response back or a reaction back, choosing not to. Sometimes time is our best friend in these scenarios, right? So when that text came into me, maybe I put my phone away before I go and shoot that mean text right back. Sometimes time is the difference to allow my emotions to downregulate enough to create that space where now I can choose to respond in a new way. The second thing we can do is begin to practice objective observation, right? Separating ourselves and beginning to practice acknowledging what is actually happening in objective terms. This is different than the stories we've told ourselves about what's happening. So friend texts and says objectively what friend says, not the meanings that I'm going to assign to that, which is, oh, this person doesn't care, how dare they don't respect me. Those are stories. So what is objectively happening? It's really learning how to, in a sense, like hover and kind of explore, observe the situation in a new way. That for a lot of us is the difference between a response and a reaction. If we, over time, color what's happening less and less, we don't assign those meanings, we can have more space then to choose a new response in a future. Another thing we can begin to practice is focusing on our own breath. Chances are you're emotionally activated when that thing happens, right? That's not going to go away immediately. So by bringing our attention, those of you who know I'm a big fan of deep belly breathing, maybe we give a deep belly breath or two, that'll do two things. It'll give us a focal point for our attention on our breath that's not in our mind, in these stories, on the phone over there that I just have to go now pick up, right? I'm focusing on something different. So I'm doing something with my attention, not feeding the stories that are going to create the emotions more and more. And it might even regulate those emotions, bringing you back to that calmer place where responses can be generated. And then the final step is to forgive yourself when you go back to those old reactions, because you're human and you will. Like I said when I started this is a process. I spent a lot of time knowing this difference and knowing these tools before I was able to consistently apply them. And there still are moments where I indulge those older reactions. So this isn't linear. We don't just read this and do differently. This is really about cultivating these tools to create that space and offering ourselves grace when those old reactions rear their heads, as they will.